Staff shortages, hours-long waits, and elders being loaded onto planes using baggage carts. Those were the conditions elders at Avens Seniors Home faced when Yellowknife evacuated last summer. The details are in an internal report by the company obtained by the CBC. Sarah Krymalowski read that report, and she joins me now with more. So, Sarah, what did the report say?
Well, one of the first things that jumps out is just how unprepared Avens was for an evacuation. Less than 3 weeks before Yellowknifers got the order to leave, they had no plan. They'd assumed that the Northwest Territories government would take over, and nobody at the territory actually told them otherwise at all until after nearby Becheco evacuated at the end of July. So as you can imagine, this led to a very bumpy evacuation. There were really serious staff shortages at Avens because so many essential workers left before they actually started evacuating care residents. And the residents were also subjected to some pretty uncomfortable situations during the evacuation. Some residents waited in their wheelchairs for 9 hours in total before they took off, the report says. And the plane that they were on didn't end up arriving in Edmonton until 2:30 in the morning, and some people had to wait after that. On the way back to Yellowknife, Avens still wasn't able to get proper medical equipment to load residents onto planes from either Alberta Health Services or the Northwest Territories governments. So some residents who had mobility issues were loaded onto the planes through a combination of baggage carts and being physically lifted.
What impact did this have on residents, Sarah?
Well, no long-term care residents were injured during the evacuation, but I spoke to an expert who said that some of what happened was definitely a health risk. This is Dr. Samir Sinha. He's a geriatric specialist and an expert on seniors and emergencies.
I can tell you, you won't find a luggage cart in a hospital. You won't find it in a care home. It's just not, kind of something that we would use to transport someone safely.
Sinha says that Avens did get some things right. They had a plan for where to go and how to get there, and they had go bags for residents that contained important medications and medical histories. But he thinks a lot of what went wrong could have been prevented if there had been more planning in advance from both Avens and governments.
So have there been any changes then that have happened since this report and the evacuation?
Yeah, so I had a pretty long conversation with Daryl Delaney, who's the Avens CEO. He says that Avens has really improved its emergency plan since then, and they feel they're a lot more prepared for an evacuation. But he also insisted that nothing that happened last year was unsafe.
At no time were our residents ever in a precarious situation. Maybe in an uncomfortable wait time, yes, but always cared for, medication there, food, personal hygiene, bathroom breaks, all that kind of stuff were paramount.
He also says that Avens should have gotten more support from the Northwest Territories government, especially when it came to transportation and finding beds in Alberta. I also spoke to Jay Boast, who is the information officer for the Northwest Territories Emergency Management Organization at the time, and I asked him about the territory's role in the Avens evacuation as well.
I mean, did we learn lessons and could we have done better? I think that is clear, but I think it is in the context of an event that had never happened in history before, and I think that shouldn't be lost in the context of how things unfolded.
Bose says that there should be less confusion about roles during an evacuation now that the territory has a new emergency plan. And the Northwest Territories Health Authority also told me by email that they will be taking the lead if Avens evacuates again.
Okay, thanks for all your work on this, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.